All right, let's jump straight into it. 10:27 on 25th of April, so we've got Anzac Day, and we are at the end of the week, Friday again. So we are really sort of clicking along here. We've only got a couple of trading days left of the week, and then of course into May, and yeah, the year's sort of flying along here. But look, let's get into it and start off with gold. So. It's one of these things where sort of like, we sold down, covered it yesterday, and that basically had this little break. I mean, we put this little falling resistance in here, and we sort of said, look, it's a pretty sort of that three kind of drive down to the low coming through this sort of falling resistance of this massive sell-off. We saw the rally sold into, and then we were sort of thinking, okay, well, if this is going to sort of move up and then sort of come back down, this is the kind of path that we were looking for, sort of like, accept the fact that we're going to get the breakup. We've got that little short, and I actually got on the short side a couple of times through here, and I really sort of thought this point here was like, okay, they bounced up and lower low, and here we go, boom, and it's grinded back up. But it's funny because like we've just opened up and it's spiked up straight away. If you look on a lower time frame, you can see this quite well. Um, where's the open? I think this is the open just here. And as you can see, it's sort of pretty flat on the actual open, but then straight away, bang, shots, excuse me, shot straight up, took out those first bounce highs from yesterday, just cleared out the top, and then bang, sold straight back into and straight back down to open level. So look, we are sort of bouncing up here a little bit at the moment. So you want to sort of see a bit of a continuing of that sort of sell, of that sell through that period. What's going on here? Click that little zone just here. So a little move down underneath sort of 40, 45 or so. That'll sort of give you a little bit of a sort of sell off. I mean, this is a 15-minute chart, so this isn't really too much to sort of work on. But I mean, you can see this kind of stuff here. If this gets sold into before taking out a new high here, then it puts the pressure back onto 46 and then to sort of come down. And this is why it's important, because I've got some people sort of like, they don't know the sort of trade, trade this time frame, trade that time. You need to be able to sort of assess these things in multiple time frames, at least if you're sort of kind of doing what I do and sort of like, you're going in and out because, you could see a lower high in this 15-minute time frame, which obviously then if, put onto a higher time frame, obviously equates to, a break of this little support that it's sort of set up here on an hourly, and hourly's a fair enough one that you can get a decent-ish kind of move out of. But if we can see useful here, this is the kind of little range that we're looking for, at least through the start of Asia. So the sort of fact that it sort of took out these highs and then sold down straight away, it's kind of significant because you know that if we carry this all the way across here, this is where the sellers are sitting. So, they came up in here, bang. First shot, they sold it down. Second shot, they sold it down. You want to see that the sellers are still here. So if they do come up in here and test it again, it gets sold down. Or if we go back to that lower time frame, you want to see that the sellers have moved from here and then have moved down a scratch. Only a couple of points in this case, well, $10 or so. But you want to see that they're applying pressure to then sort of put the focus on the buyers that are holding this 47 line. So that's the thing. At the end of the day, it's all just about sort of, buyers, a battle between the buyers and the sellers. That's what technical analysis is. You're sort of seeing where the strength is, where the buyers are, where the sellers are, where they've given up. If they are going to give up, where are they going to retreat to? So you can look at like that's literally what support and resistance are. Just sort of identifying where the buyers are and where the sellers are. Excuse me. So if we sort of, find that the sellers have moved down from this point here, it's putting pressure on 46. 46 then, you've got this little bit of a trend, not a sort of super thing. These trends you kind of prefer to have from the lows, but you can find that there are sort of little trends sort of within a move, because obviously this was a little bit of a fake out move, as you can see. It sort of came down, boom, took out the lows, and then sort of moved up through here. So I wouldn't really call this true price action. But as the market did start to sort of buy it up, buy, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell, you can see that this line here seems to be something fairly strong that the market is sort of reacting off. But in the short term, underneath 44, I'd be looking for possibly a move back down towards this sort of higher time frame sort of support area around that sort of 18, and I think that's the level that you want to sort of initially sort of take out to sort of see a move towards tackling the lows and then obviously continuation. So you see how it starts from a 15-minute, but then builds to the higher time frame moves as well. So if we get on to something more like an hourly here, you can see. Actually, let's get rid of this just for now. If you're selling this thing, this is kind of what you're looking for at the moment. Potential sort of bear flag sort of playing out through here. And if we sort of just, oops. If this were to be the case, it's got a fairly significant little price target. Actually, sort of seems to come back in line with the top side of that original massive channel. Interesting. We'll see how that goes. With these sort of things, you're going, okay, look, if I'm a sort of bear and I'm trying to sell these things down, where am I going to drive it to? And this is why you need to sort of consider both sides of things in sort of, you do your analysis. Sometimes it sort of comes across like, you're long and you're short kind of thing with it all. That's fine, and particularly with what I do, I'm not an investor. I'm not looking to sort of buy something and then sort of capture, I would love to capture a $500 move, but most likely, well, I'm not going to be doing that, or I'll do it in sort of sections. But the point is, you got to consider it from both sides. So if you're a bear and you think this thing's going down, and that is the camp that I'm in, I do think we're coming down lower. I think seems a fairly stretched kind of move, but that is the technical sort of measured move of a bear flag. Should this play out? So that's where, it would be. I'm looking more 3160. I think, as I said, I've covered this a few times. That's a 61% retracement. It's the previous highs, which never actually got a full touch up as that broke through the other week. So I think once we do get here, I am expecting a bit of a reaction along these kind of lines here. So I do think this is probably a target for the market to sort of drive down towards. But that's just in that sort of sell down sort of scenario. If you're sort of thinking, okay, well, this is you're a buyer and you're thinking, okay, yep, this is just a pullback in a larger move. Well, then you're sort of looking at this whole sort of bigger, larger fib from this move from the bottom down here up to the top. You're looking back at the fact that it's come back here and held that 38% retracement. So that's the sort of the bull case is this 38%. That's your move there. And look, from a structural standpoint, this makes sense. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean to necessarily sort of come down bear flag, boom, 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 play down like this. You got to honor the idea that we were sort of incredibly bullish. Like that's not gonna, it hasn't just disappeared overnight. But you're going to have through a structure always up to find resistance, back to find support. Support generally will be the previous resistance. Hence my sort of feeling that that will probably be more of your move. Hence why sort of in the medium term, I am looking sort of more towards this sort of lower level down here. But 38%, we've seen through this whole sort of drive up through here, these are very shallow pullbacks. Because you've got to think, at a time, this was the move. This was the high that people were looking at. And it pulled back here, 23%, and bang, on it went again. So, this was very bullish. And yes, it sort of corrected quite substantially, I suppose, in the whole scheme of things. I mean, $200 or so, definitely a fairly substantial sort of pullback there. But, you're going to go through, and I think this is important. I was thinking about this the other day. You got to be able to identify what part of the leg you're in. At the moment, we're in this leg here. We've had our big drive up. We're in our little pullback. Is this part, is that it? Is that the pullback to 38%? And then now we're driving. Because if we drive and we sort of break up here, and this is why this little sort of resistance point here is probably quite important, because we've put in a little inside structural high. We've come back, we've found support. Buyers are moving up in terms of this, in terms of this actual little bounce move up here. buyers were down here, sellers are here, buyers are here, sellers are here. Well, that's almost like a little ascending triangle set to break to move up here. So I think if you break above 60, the 33.60, and close up above here, you've got that 33.80, which we sort of saw on like, yeah, that's where that gap down kind of happened from, and the bounce came right back up and then sort of like sold down for it. So I'd probably put that as an upside breakout area, but I'd say above sort of 33.80, you're probably saying that, whoops, this is kind of your move, and there's not a great deal structurally standing in its way to sort of coming back up and testing those highs, and that's your structure there. Break up, pull back, support, this move here. And then this leg, we're looking for sort of like, is this going to be the one that gives us a double top, lower high, high high, continuation, reversal, range? That kind of sort of breakdown with things. So if we get rid of a bit of this to clean it up a bit, this is why I believe that this is quite an important level. The fact that it just got above it and then sold down, to me, is more bearish than it is bullish, because this is what these things do. They go past by the smallest little part, just take out these levels, and then boom, reverse back down. There was a lot of this going on about a month or so ago. I had a mate that, I have a mate that trades a lot of indices, and we said so say pretty much like that was the trigger. That was the thing. It was sort of like, that it would come down, and just because it made a new low, well, that's a time to buy. Or just because it made a new high, that's a time to sell and short it. Because the thing is, these things were sort of taking it out by like just a couple of points. Look at this, like the 69.30 to 70, by $1, and then bang, sellers came in straight away. So I think certainly if we can sort of go up here, flip this, and then sort of come back down, underneath 30 in this sort of look here, underneath 30 takes you out. It looks like there's a little bit of sort of interest around this level here. It was that previous sort of weekly open, but underneath 30 takes you out of this little bear flag setup, and means that you can sort of drive down. Look, the support at 33.11. So underneath 33.11 is kind of like the swing low of this setup here. And I think if we can get down underneath 33.11, I'm going to put this down here. Smooth swing low moving for a bear flag. Underneath there, I think it's going to be pretty good. Unless they just take out that by 1 week and then shoot it back up. But for the time being, I think that they're the kind of areas that you need to sort of look for to sort of see where are we going to get our next bit of, whoops, click these things twice. There we go. That's the kind of area I'm looking for direction. I think either up here or down here. So at the moment, obviously, it's hanging around in that sort of top half of it all. So it feels a little bit more sort of like, wants to sort of try and continue here. It's got the RSI kind of sitting in the middle, not really anything too flash. It does look like it would support a move, should it sort of move up through here. But I think sort of, as I said, this little range high, but even then you got that sort of 33.80 level just above it. I think, and the fact that this sold down into it, I think that sort of puts it on a caution to be buying it at this point, because I think there's a very high likelihood that we do come down to these 31.60 levels, but of course it's got work to do. So underneath 33, 33.10, 33.5, call 33 the full level there. I think that'll sort of see this move kind of play out to the downside here. Should we get above 33.80? Well, that's it. That's our pullback, and then your targets are really just on going back up to 3,500. There's a $120 move up this way, and then there's a about what's that, about 100 and 140 down this way. So decent sort of targets, but I think the market's just sort of gone up, thinking about it, boom, and coming down over here. I think this is just a little bit of a stutter step before we go a bit lower. I'll flip straight on to DXY. Actually, DXY sort of found its way to the back of the analysis a couple of times today. It's been pretty much uneventful because it's just been sold down, sold down. So yesterday I put this little potential inverted head and shoulders in, hence these little, whoops, hence these little arrows here saying this is where I'm focused on. As we can see, it was an area of significance over here. It's the bottom of this kind of range that we were trying to sort of form. This to be a sort of little bit of a fake out. We obviously had that wedge that broke us back up here. Now, this has come back in here. It's tested it again, and we've opened up this morning and the market's bought it up and bounced a little bit. So I think this is quite significant because, you know, if we see this thing drive back up here, as I've been saying all week, 140, I think that's your sort of confirmation that you're going to be seeing a little bit of a breakout here. So, you know, the fact that it came back down here, as I said in yesterday's analysis, was kind of expected. And the fact that it's sort of like taking a little bit to move through here, not an issue. You still got the RSI to support it. We've got that big negative divergence coming down in here. Not a big fan, to be honest, of this negative divergence. You know what I mean? It's quite broad, you know what I mean? But it is technically there, so I'll leave it on. But with these sort of, not just inverted, but also head and shoulders, doesn't matter which way they're sort of pointing, you kind of look for the shoulders from a technical standpoint to be roughly the same size. So this one came in and then you go 1, 2, 3, and then sort of broke down. This one came in 1, 2, 3. So, you know, today, Monday, I think are going to be the days that you want to sort of see this thing drive up and sort of see some continuation because we know the market loves selling US dollar. It has been for ages. It's just been hammered right down. Things don't continue forever. Inverted head and shoulders is a good reversal setup. But again, you know, with these things, you call them, you see it start to play out, you need that confirmation. You need that sort of break to sort of come, and that's obviously at that neckline. So neckline could be here, could be just probably a little bit lower there, kind of thing for it all. I mean, I've had this range marked in here for a while. So, I mean, look, you know, higher, a little bit safer kind of thing. If you do get a break of this, you know, it's not just going to go up 20 points and then break out. You're most likely going to see, as I've marked out here, inverted head and shoulders measured move, which takes you up to 102. I have got these other little areas marked in here. I'm losing, the more time it takes to get through this, the less confidence I have that they'll do too much. They might offer little speed bumps. I mean, you know, sellers, maybe here. Same sort of thing for the top up there. So they may offer something. So I'll keep them in there just to sort of see how the market does react to it all. But I think sort of like, as I said, if it breaks above, it doesn't matter. And the point I was making with that is that it doesn't matter whether the neckline's here or the neckline's there. It's a couple of points either side of it all to call confirmation. A little bit higher gives you a little bit more confirmation, but a little bit less reward. So, you know, it's on a scale there. But point is that if it does play out, you've got, you know, 140 points to your measured move target, 160 points, 170 points, whatever, 150, 60, 70 points to your measured move price target. They're trend reversal setups. It doesn't mean all of a sudden, you know, we're back up at 106, but it means that, you know, should this thing play out and break and sort of, you know, it is confirmed inverted head and shoulders, you're going to have enough time to sort of get onto that trend and onto that move, which can sort of drive these things up here. And strong correlation typically, you know, when things are working perfectly, well, perfectly, you know, air quotations perfectly, is gold and US dollar inverted. I've always been of the belief that sort of, you know, I work on a 90-10 kind of rule with that. 90% of the time they work well and they run inversely. 10% of the time they'll run together. When they run together, you can get smacked about. But certainly, you know, when they are running in their normal sort of inverted sort of setup, you know, you can make some good money with it because, you know, if we start to see some interest in the US dollar and by interest, we see this neckline break and this inverted head and shoulders break out, we could see that put the pressure on gold. And we could see those flows come out of gold and go, hey, hold on, wait, market's buying US dollar. I've been long in gold for ages. I've got a lot of profit there. Why don't I take some of that profit on a dwindling asset, gold? Dwindling is probably maybe a bit drastic, but you know what I mean, reducing asset. I'd take that flow out of gold and put it into something that is at the bottom of its trend and has room to appreciate. Because even if this is just a mere bounce, you know, and it comes up to the 38% or the 50%, that's profit that can be made in this period here. So you got to think sort of like, you know, if I could be making money in this section here while gold's going down, why would I sort of leave my money? Whoops, let's move that back to where we are. Why would I leave my money in something that's reducing? Why wouldn't I take the flow out of gold, put it into US dollar? US dollar drives up to this area, then we put it back out of US dollar into gold, which at that time is back at the 31.60, 61% line, and then now it moves back up over there. And I think that it seems like a plausible flow of capital in that at the moment. So if we do see this little inverted head and shoulders break out, I expect gold to probably at the same time be breaking that bear flag, and I think the two will run together. And the way that you can kind of use these things is that in this scenario, should this break out, it hasn't confirmed, of course, yet. Should this work, you can sort of almost sort of play on the idea that I'm going to keep shorting gold, or I'm going to hold off buying gold till at least DXY completes its measured move, or vice versa. I'm going to sort of keep sort of buying US dollar crosses till gold hits its sort of measured move. And then once gold hits its measured move, you could maybe expect to be seeing US dollar be hitting its resistance areas, its measured moves, and then it start to sell back down. And then you use that to sort of at the time to sort of swap out of your US dollar sort of long positions. Because I don't think this is like, you know, okay, that's it, we've hit the bottom. I mean, we came very close to an area that we identified, you know, within 10 points. But I think it's probably more likely, if at all, we see minimum this. I think this will bounce for a bit, for a couple of days, week or whatever, should it break out. But then I think we'll sort of at least be revisiting these levels again. I don't think this is the bottom of the bottom. I think we sort of move up here for a period, and then we move back down. This in line with gold not being at a very all-time high, it coming down, and then moving back up. That's how I'm expecting these two to sort of play out. So that's all very well. That's a sort of bigger, broader picture of US dollar gold, of course. Short term, let's get on to something that's actionable. As I said, it's sort of like it's very choppy around here, but you know, this is the thing, it was very choppy around this thing. Realistically, we're just in a range here at the moment. You want to see it, obviously, first of all, take out this little wick. This is a little sort of, if you can see this, should put it onto a lower time frame, probably show it a little bit better. This is a little double bottom. We're coming into a little resistance area here. So you can see, whoops, click. This is your little zone resistance here. That would give you a little double bottom in this pullback into the higher time frame support, bottom of the range. So you want to see this thing drive up here at the moment. If this can push through here, well, you know, then we're sort of coming back up, I mean, probably towards these kind of levels over here. And as you can start to see this thing build out, that's then sort of going to be opening up the doors to coming up and testing the major higher time frame breakout levels. But you've got to start with these small ones first. So look, it's a pretty sort of a bullish open for it all. You know what I mean, in terms of 1 hour chart, gapped up and shot straight up. So I think, look, we'll see how this goes. Generally, they do like to close the gaps. I sort of say if they don't close it straight away, they'll close it in Europe. If they don't close it in Europe, then they won't close it for 2 or 3 weeks. So, this could be a little magnet for later. I mean, this is sort of really sort of forward thinking with that there. But should this thing just break away and run away and leave this gap, I think this is a good plausible reason for that other scenario that it will come back down there later on, albeit a small gap. What about 30, 12 point gap, still a gap. So yeah, we'll sort of see what happens. I think sort of a little break above here might sort of see this thing push up a little bit, but for the time being, market's kind of stalled. Uh, Australia's got, as I said, it started this Anzac Day today. I don't think that's really going to affect markets great deal, and that you still got China, and they're really the big buyers, particularly sort of buyers of gold and sellers of the US dollar at the moment. I don't think anybody's sort of going, wow, ANZ's not at their desks today. I don't think anybody really cares in terms of the FX world. So, yeah, I'll break above this level here, looking for a continuation up to the top side. Should this thing break, should or this whole sort of thing fail, you come down here, you got a little bit of support down at 98, call it 99, sort of flat on and that. I think this is your fail line. And again, this is the whole point, sort of having both of them, both directions planned out. I think if you close down underneath 98, well, that means that this isn't a head and shoulders, it's kind of invalidated then. You'll see it sort of drift back down, and you're looking at 98. You're looking for Aussie to break out above 64. Probably gold will be sort of doing that breakout above 33.80 at that point as well. So this is how you can use the sort of the charts. As I said, I call it cross chart confluence. But if you see US dollar breaking down here, I would say that's the same time gold longs are breaking above 33.80 and driving back up towards the highs. All right, let's have a look at Aussie. Really, it's just sideways in a bit of a range up the top over here. As it is at the moment, it's not really anything. Yeah, I mean, that was a bit of a. Let's put it like this. Um, Clean it up a little bit. All in all, it's just sideways. I mean, it does look like it's kind of rolling over, but it keeps flaring up and flaring up and flaring up. It's where's the little curve thing? It does look a little bit like a rounded top. Yeah, that's good enough. These aren't sort of typical sort of like setups that I do kind of use, but as you can see, it is kind of like coming in. We've technically got lower lows. This is what I'm talking about. Comes down under 2 points. Bang, reversal. But the top side here, even with this, excluding this little spike up here, which was a bit of a sort of news-driven thing the other night, we are getting lower lows, lower highs coming through here, albeit only small and then very fast reversing. I think this really still takes you back to this idea down here. You need to get underneath sort of 63.20 for a downside move. But at the moment, that does look like it wants to sort of roll over. So should it come back down here and then bounce again, I'll be looking for one more sort of sell into it around probably sort of like, underneath 85 for a bit of a confirmation of this move like this. I think that's kind of the play that we're seeing here at the moment. It's had a lot of attempts to get up and get above the 64 level. I mean, where we're sitting right at it at the moment. As you can see, market's just rejecting it each time. It's very hard for it to. I mean, look, this was an incredible bounce. And it does look like it's consolidating up the top over here. This could still, and this is what I said the other day as well. Like I was like, if this thing just shoots up above 64.50, this little big resistance, well, little big, this big sort of resistance level that we saw, play a lot. I mean, we've got it marked out because we know buyers are here, buyers are here, buyers are here. Once they gave up this line, sell, sell. You know what I mean? They're just tipping into this line here. But at the moment, it is looking, you are technically getting lower lows and lower highs, so it is kind of pulling back, but not really. Yeah, I wouldn't really call it anything like this, but I guess something to this kind of effect could see a move down. I think you'd probably, even if you get down here, I'd expect one more bounce at least. Excuse me. And then a sell. If we see the sellers come in one last time and hold it underneath, say, 80, I think you really got to start looking at short, like sort of a decent short underneath 63. Because I think sort of realistically, then you're just looking at a rounded top. As I said, rounded tops aren't really my thing. Like I understand the concept, and obviously you can identify them in that. But in terms of sort of, what do you look for a measured move on rounded top? Is there something? I mean, can we say that it's something like this? Now, this isn't anything. This is just me doing for my own sort of thing. See how this is. Say this does play out, and this is a rounded top. This is the middle, down the bottom there. It seems like a plausible sort of thing. Um, anyway, I'll leave that on just so I can sort of see how it plays out. So let's have a little look at these ones. So what have we got? We got RBA potentially cutting. So that's obviously going to put a little bit of pressure on Aussie. We've got US dollar potentially sort of having a little short-term rally. That's going to be, US dollar going to be putting a little short-term rally. That's going to be pushing Aussie down. RBA potentially cutting is going to be pushing Aussie down. China, it's a bit hard with this one. I do think it's going up, but I'm going to put him in a little bit of a sideways thing here at the moment. So certainly, as you can see with this setup, it is very much more. I mean, this is a very rough, raw kind of look at things, but should that US dollar inverted head and shoulders play out, you're going to see some buying across the board. RBA, they're looking to cut. They are saying, "Oh, look, it's priced in, yada yada," um, but still, I mean, that's not a sort of a green light. Hey, super hawkish. We're going to be upping the rates or anything, or at least holding. So that would be putting a little bit of a handbrake on things. So obviously more in the downward direction. And China is just really sideways. I mean, like they're in their range. I'll cover the one in a moment, but they're just in a sideways grind range. So you can't really sort of give it to either side with the China at the moment. So given this kind of setup, given this kind of setup, I'm still looking for sort of shorts on Aussie around here. Look, it did have quite a solid actual bounce. Look, I was actually short through this period here, and I was just like, here we go, under 50, bang, bang. Rockets right back up. So should we get back down under here again? I think that's going to be looking a little bit healthier. The more times you tap into these areas here, but I think sort of first things first, underneath these like little lower time frame zones, another rejection from 64 should see this thing. I mean, the RSI, this is a 1 hour, but the RSI is tipping down over this. What's the 4 hour look like? Look, 4 hour actually looks like he'd be happy to sort of give it a bit of a shot, but we saw the same thing here. It was obviously sort of pushing up. RSI was tipping up. This was ready to go and got smacked on the head there. Oh, so we've just ticked onto a new 4 hour candle. Look, take out these wicks underneath sort of say 90. I think that'll be sort of when we see a little bit of a cooling on the Aussie dollar. DXY is just broken through that little short-term resistance there as well. All right, move along. We got silver. So silver, as I said, I was cautious of this one. Yes, I actually had a little stab at a short, and I sort of just caught this little move back through here. And as you can see, it's bounced back up to the top over here. So let's just do this and say that is your little range that you're looking for now. Get rid of this, get rid of this, get rid of this. I've heard some pretty bullish calls on this stuff. I have been saying that, look, I'm kind of against that idea. I'm very impressed, surprised, whatever you want to call it, in the bounce and resilience of this move. I mean, I caught this move, but this is equally just as good. Not as dramatic or fast, of course, but you know what I mean. They did sort of play this quite well, this bounce coming up through here. But I still think structurally we haven't seen the proper move to test this thing to come back down underneath. So I'm going to put this to here, this to here. This isn't. Can we do any better? Maybe this. No, I don't like that. Look, that's not a perfect sort of thing. How do we go if we line this up to a channel? Yeah, look, I've been saying down from here, down from here, down from here. I'm going to sit on the sideline with this one here, but I wouldn't be buying it, put it that way. I think this is kind of the best you can sort of hope for. But well, sorry, the best that you can hope for. No, I think sort of realistically, I'm happy enough with, you know, 2 touches here, 2 touches here. It looks like a fairly decent sort of looking channel. I think these are your kind of levels that you're kind of looking here. You need to hold 33. I think under 33, you're looking at 32.20. So let's just put some little arrows on this one here. I think if you come down here, you're looking at 33.20, but at the same time, then remember you've broken this potential channel. So I think this is an interesting area. That's the kind of move. And I'd expect a little bit of a reaction from here, like this. So I think this is kind of where I'd be looking at. If you want to buy it, I would say that's an area to buy it. But again, you got to remember the fact that then, you know, you've come all the way back up here, you know, now broken this channel. Is the thing going to sweep down underneath here? Certainly, if you had a stab at buying it here, you'd want to get out pretty quickly. You give yourself 30 points and sort of say, hey, look, if I stuff that one, then I'm out here. We can sort of build this thing up here a little bit more. So there's your bounce. I mean, that's only back to the 23% of this bounce. So, you know, you could definitely see some sort of reaction here, but I wouldn't be buying it at the top up here. Not with potentially US dollar having a little bit of a rally. But should that rally a little bit, I think that could give reason to a downside move with silver here. All right, and flip along. We got copper, and copper's still grinding along. This might be able to give us a bit of a better idea of a channel. At least the support. Again, look, you know, wiping out that bottom part of it all, but you know what, this was just mayhem down here. Not a big fan of that one. No, look, again, this thing could definitely come up. I think top side, you're looking at close the gap and then sell down. But again, I'm sort of more into the idea that this thing will probably break lower. I wouldn't mind buying it, but at the same time, I'm not going to buy it at this level. So this is the zone I put in here. You're seeing at this point, I mean, you know, see how these things finish up. It hasn't sort of confirmed yet. But I think the thing with this here is it's in the, you know, the three steps that we say. Resistance, pullback, find support. We're in this crucial third leg. And this is the thing I say. It's very, very important to sort of identify what leg of a move you're in. Because you can see the same sort of thing in all these moves. Resistance, support, crucial third leg. Is it lower high, double top, continuation? Well, it obviously went through. There's a continuation. Cycle starts again. Goes up, finds resistance, comes back, finds support at that previous resistance, moves up again. We're in this leg here now. As this is right now, it's in a lower high. So the thing with copper here is, should we go back through 485 before going through 498? Well, that gives you a lower high, breaks this channel here, or rising support, and that's where you'll get your sell down there. So I'm going to put an alert just underneath there. Let's see if I can... cooling off on copper. So structurally, as I said, if you fail to put in a new high, then you're not continuing this move through. We're going to start to see lower lows here. And then you're looking at the same structure, but back the other way. It'll move down, find support, it'll find resistance, it'll rally up, find resistance, probably at a previous support area, and then move down like this. Same sort of thing. Is this the higher low? Double bottom, lower low, continuation. And this is what will give us a trend reversal structurally set up. So I think sort of it's very important for it to hold 485. I think if it doesn't hold 485, I'm looking for sort of this kind of setup coming down here. Previous areas of support, previous expected previous area of support. Should you get should this play out, the way that you enact this, should this thing break down here, come up here, and we see the sellers come in here, the people that were buying it here, people that were selling it here, if they all go, yep, that's it, let's do it, bang, that's your leg there that you want to be involved with. Because this is the first leg of this trend change, so you've got the highest chance that this is actually going to play out. So the longer this little trend goes, the less likely, obviously, these things peter out, the less likely you're going to sort of get that sort of continuation move. But certainly once you've just broken the initial start of the trend, this thing could come back up here and then sort of screw you out. That's a different story. But structurally, if you see the sellers come in here lower than they are at this high, that's the time to sort of get short if you want to short this thing, or it's definitely the time to get out if you're still long. But I think that this is yeah, kind of the area that we're at the moment. As I said, I'm looking for this move back down here. Look, this is a 4-hour candle. You still got an hour left on this one. It hasn't sort of broken here yet. So as I said, confirmation is underneath this 4855 level. Continuation, you're moving up here, but again, I think that the upside here is quite limited because I imagine once we close the gap, you're going to see some selling. So, I think you got to be cautious about buying it if you're not already holding longs at this point. Again, how this flows on to the other things as well. If we do see a cooling across here, that could be putting some pressure on Aussie. Of course, vice versa. And finally with China, look, it's really just sideways hustle at the moment. This is what I was looking for yesterday, and I still think that this will have a bit of a move, so I can move this just along here. I still think this is going to have some upside. I don't see necessarily this thing breaking prior to actually having some sort of resolution. If you look at it just in a sort of short-term structural basis, you've got the buyers have sort of moved up here a little bit. They went down, bounced, moved back down. Buyers have moved from 728, 728.7, very small, but that is strictly kind of how it works. Take out the bounce high, then you could see the move up over here. But again, I think sort of the thing is once it gets up into these levels here, 733, 731, I imagine market just to sell into it and a continuation of this kind of sideways grind. As I said, probably till at least I think I don't know. I mean, this stuff changes that much, but I think as of the time of this, I think that Trump and Xi are supposed to be sort of meeting at some stage. I think early May 5th or something. Actually, no, that's when the election is in Australia. Not quite sure, but I think that's what I had seen anyway. All right, so on to any sort of form of news. It's pretty light, I'm pretty sure, to end the week off. As I said, we got a couple of bank holidays, Australia, New Zealand, and Italy, and nothing through Asia because of that as well. We got sort of CPI ticking up a little bit in Japan. Doesn't really affect us a great deal. Retail sales over in the UK looking a little bit slow, a little bit sluggish. And then, look, retail sales in Canada and then consumer sentiment pretty flat looking over in the US to sort of finish things off. All right, that's it from me.